Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where my guest is Metro Council person Dwight Hudson for District 9, which is primarily outside of the city limits of Baton Rouge. Mr. Hudson is going to talk to us about $165 million that the federal government just gave our city and parish to be spent, hopefully, by the mayor on flooding, which is her intent, and drainage issues, along with crime. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Metro Councilman Dwight Hudson.
Hi, I'm Sean Fagan of Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan & Associates. Open the phone book or look online. There are plenty of lawyers to choose from. And if you ask any of them, they'll agree that the vast majority of claims settle without ever having gone to trial. And I'll tell you, any lawyer can settle a claim. It's not hard to settle a claim, but it takes hard work to get a client what he or she deserves. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan & Associates, we have a proven record of working hard for our clients. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call.
Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have on the show for the first time Dwight Hudson. He is a Metro Council member for District 9. Dwight, it's fantastic to have you on the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the invitation.
Learn to look forward to kind of learning who you are and where you come from and why you're on the Metro Council. So dive in. First, kind of give us some personal information and tell us why people really care what you would have to say or what you've got to deal with, okay?
So yeah, I'm the Metro Councilman for District 9 here in East Baton Rouge Parish. My wife, Stacy, and I live in Shenandoah Estates.
Two daughters already?
Two daughters, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, so we've got our, hands full. That's right. But you know, they were the big reason why I decided to run for the Metro Council. I've kind of always been involved in politics, but I started getting this really, this feeling that, hey, I want my kids to have East Baton Rouge Parish as an option when they go to have their own kids one day. I want them to desire to stay right here in the parish. And so I feel like there were some things we needed to get in order, some things we needed to change in order to make that happen. And so ran for the Metro Council and doing my best to see those things through.
Well, I'm glad you did. And as you know, that's the whole genesis of the St. George movement. And we'll talk about that a little later. But I've talked to Dustin and several folks over the years that what they want is to continue to live in this area, but because of some of the issues that we're facing, whether it's crime or not so great public schools and other issues, infrastructure and such, you can go 10 miles across the Amite River and you've got great schools and some other positive developments. So I applaud your efforts to help East Baton Rouge Parish and the city continue to thrive and improve.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So as I understand it, you first ran in 16 and were seated in what, January of 17?
January of 17.
Okay.
That's correct. So this is my second term. Okay.
And your educational background, employment history is what?
I have a bachelor's from Southeastern, and then I'm currently employed as a real estate agent here.
Okay.
And so that's the real job.
And you mentioned, well, and let me tell you something, folks don't understand how much work you have to do in politics, and particularly a Metro Council person, because you're not paid a lot of money by any stretch of the imagination.
Definitely not.
and in a lot of ways, it's a 24/7 job. So thank you for your sacrifice, and all of our Metro Council folks. So what was the impetus that kind of got you focused on the Metro Council? Because you'd mentioned earlier that you used to work with Buddy Amoroso, who was previously a council person.
That's right. That's right.
And Buddy was in charge of tax busters and all that over the decades past. So what is that kind of where the genesis of this motivation came from?
No, I've actually been involved in politics at sort of all the different levels over the years. I got my start volunteering for Bill Cassidy back when he ran for Congress the first time. Eventually worked on Senator David Vitter's re-election campaign. Used to think that I wanted to be a professional campaigner, but I quickly found out that you couldn't pay the bills and only support the people that you really wanted to support. Went and got myself a real job shortly after college and wanted to stay involved. What I've found is that my passion really is at the municipal level. I find that municipal government is what touches you the most. If your trash isn't getting picked up, if your ditches aren't operating, if your drainage is not operating like it should, or if the sewer is not operating like it should, that's where government really hits home for most people.
Schools too.
Schools
Crime
as well.
Too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Business, environment, economics. I mean, it is very important at the local level. And honestly, in a lot of ways, I think my generation dropped the ball because the country is now so split, it seems like everywhere. And you just go, how did this happen? And I wonder if it's because folks didn't engage the way that you are.
Sure.
And other folks like you.
Yeah, you definitely have to stay involved. This is a great country, and we just can't let this special thing that we have slip away from us.
Amen. So tell folks kind of, in your view, what are the big issues that are facing the city and the parish? Because most of your District 9 is outside of the city limits. Is that right?
Correct, yeah.
Does that cause a lot of headbutting with folks in the Metro Council?
I don't know about headbutting. There certainly is a debate and a sort of a battle over resources. But we do our best to, to go in and engage in that debate respectfully and do what we can to serve our constituents. I would say that the biggest issue that we're facing is drainage and improving our infrastructure.
Flooding, I guess.
Flooding, absolutely.
The consequence of bad drainage.
But then also crime. Those are our two big issues that we're dealing with the unprecedented crime that we have right now. It's clear we've got to make sure that we address those issues.
All right, let's hit drainage first. Flooding, because
sure.
We endured 2016. We've endured hurricanes and heavy rains like I've never experienced in the last 5 years or so. And I hear, and honestly, I was involved in a lot of litigation in the past, probably 30 years ago, 25 years ago, because there's so much construction now taking place in the areas that may be considered pretty iffy on flooding, and it seems like it's never stopped. Actually, in my day and age, we got a moratorium, and I know that was a debate that you guys were having for a little while. Where is that whole concept in the political process? Just not going to happen?
Well, so we do have what we call a special moratorium for properties that are in the floodplain. We are requiring an increased standard for their stormwater storage. So the normal storage that we require in East Baton Rouge Parish is 25-year, and I'll follow up on that in just a second.
And when you say storage, you're talking about digging the pond, and that's where the water
goes? The
Jay
retention
Darden's,
pond.
Playing. Yeah, I remember when Jay did that.
Yeah, so right now, if you're wanting to develop in the floodplain, we're no longer letting you develop to that 25-year standard. We're requiring you to go up to a 100-year standard.
Which means what? Bigger pond?
Which means being able to provide more storage for stormwater on site. And meter it off at a rate not to exceed the 10-year in order to let the water go off slowly, and so it doesn't impact the larger conveyance system.
So I have a quick question, because it always frustrated me, because I guess I couldn't understand it. If you're digging a hole so that the flood water goes in there instead of in your houses, but it's a pond and it's holding water, how does that solve the flood problem? More water can't go where water already is. Am I missing something?
So the storage area is the space between the level of the pond or the outfall. Where you see that level of the pond, there's also an outfall that meters off the water at a rate not to exceed the pre-development rate. Between there and then the top of their retention system, so the levees of the pond or what have you, however it's designed. And so what we're requiring is that
interesting,
you've got to carry that water for
if you have a huge flood and all that water comes in there, that little old pipe that's kind of draining the water out of the pond isn't going to do it fast enough, is it?
And therein lies the issue that we've had. So up until 2017, late 2017, every subdivision developed in East Baton Rouge Parish was designed to a 10-year rainfall standard. Well, you look at 2016, you look at the 2019 flood, and then you look at also this year as well. We've exceeded that standard at least 3 times. So that ought to tell you right there that 10-year standard was too low for too long. And so regularly you would see issues come up with that.
So next question then, the old ponds, existing ones, do they have to adjust and drop their pipe to a lower depth? We'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith with my special guest, Dwight Hudson, Metro Council member for District 9. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Sean Fagan of Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates. When insurance companies have been unfair, we've never been afraid to go to trial. Fighting hard to protect your rights, we never settle a case out of convenience. We only settle when it's right for you. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call.
I'm lawyer Collins Locke Meredith. Trust is important when hiring an injury law firm. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan Associates, thousands have trusted us and gotten the results they deserved. Visit us at LockeMeredith.com. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call, 272-5555.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. My guest is Metro Councilman Dwight Hudson. He is the council person for District 9. Let's dive back in, Dwight.
Sure.
So we're talking about flooding and trying to alleviate the flooding that occurs in not only the city of Baton Rouge, but the parish of Baton Rouge. And you're telling me that y'all now require that basically the holes that hold water, which are converted to ponds, I guess, they're going to have to be deeper or wider because they now, instead of meeting the 10-year floodplain, are going to have to meet the 100-year floodplain.
Correct.
So that means they go deeper than those in the past and or wider.
Correct. Provide more storage is the ultimate goal. The other thing that I'll say is that right now we're doing it with just properties impacted by the floodplain. But what we know is that the water from outside the floodplain is eventually going to go to the floodplain, right? So through our stormwater master plan, our goal is by about next summer, we ought to have the standards to set for across the parish. So regardless of whether or not you're in the floodplain, we're going to most likely set a higher standard, not just for stormwater storage, but also for floodplain mitigation.
Is that why there's currently a moratorium on any additional?
So right now there's
or is everybody just rushing in to build whatever they're going to build right now before the new standards?
No, so the increased mitigation standards for stormwater is already in place.
Okay.
And it's called a moratorium because it's a moratorium on the current standard. You can still develop, you just have to develop to a much higher standard.
Okay, so one last issue with the whole pond concept or flood storage. My understanding is, at least where I live, which is very close to the Amite River, the ponds that are around there that I guess are flood storage, they drain into the tributaries that are already flooded. How is the water supposed to exit into them and that somehow benefit or reduce the flooding when they can't really, you can't drain a pond when it's going into a body of water that's already above its normal limits.
So that's the point, is that if the pond, you have two different types of ponds, and sometimes a pond can function in both ways, but stormwater storage, but then also floodplain mitigation. Right now, we require you to mitigate 1-for-1 your impact to the 100-year floodplain. What we're seeing is in other municipalities, for instance, Houston, they are increasing that standard. They actually require you to mitigate to the 500-year.
Because they went through what we went through in 2016,
right, the
year later.
Correct. They had a big flood in Houston as well, associated with a hurricane, and so that drove a lot of the issues and a lot of the development standards that they implemented. I think it's very clear as you go around the parish, what we're seeing is that we have lost floodplain storage that was available for that 2016 flood. And so it's important to get that mitigation standard right because we've got to have enough storage for the next flood that comes.
Now, what about clearing the existing tributaries so the flood water gets out? And I know Congressman Garrett Graves has been pushing Comite. That thing's been floating around for 35 or 40 years. Looks like we're finally getting some big bucks. But it just seems like no matter what everybody says is going to happen, it just never seems to happen.
Right. So
what's the status of those two things?
Two fronts on that issue. One, we have a big opportunity right now to play catch up. And first, let me dive into why we have to play catch up in East Baton Rouge Parish. What most folks don't realize is, we've got about a $1 billion budget in East Baton Rouge Parish. Only about 33% of that budget is general fund dollars. That's the funds that
everything else is dedicated?
Everything else is dedicated.
Meaning it's already spent, been already decided how it's going to be spent.
Correct. And so that 33% is where we fund the services that you care about the most. Drainage infrastructure, road infrastructure, all those types of functions. That 33% general fund budget is eaten up 55% or so by first responders. So you're left with a pretty small pot of money that you can go in and have an impact, which leads us to a $9 million annual budget for drainage maintenance.
Now, didn't we just pass $1 billion in taxes over 30 years in the last year and a half?
For road infrastructure, yes.
That's it.
For road infrastructure.
Nothing for drainage.
The other thing I'll add about that Move BR plan is that although it is $1 billion in new capital expenses for roads, and it impacts drainage as well. When you're building the road, you build the drainage with it. There is no additional dollars for maintenance of that infrastructure. So $1 billion in new infrastructure, but no additional dollars for maintenance. So that tells you we have got to get serious about finding a funding mechanism for drainage maintenance and road maintenance as well, for that matter, in this parish.
So that's either going to be the builders or the taxpayers, right?
Oh, Or you can go into some of our existing taxing agencies and make some trim there, which I attempted to do. But
right, I had read that you had proposed maybe shifting some tax money from the mosquito abatement program, and I've forgotten the other one.
The library
control,
yes, sir.
To dedicate it to drainage. But that didn't fly.
It did not fly. But there's still opportunities as those taxes come up for renewal. There's always still an opportunity for us to look at them. So I don't ever want to let that debate die because it's important.
Very important.
Look, if you get into the finances of mosquito abatement, you'll see they collect and then store much more than they do put out in their annual operating budget. They actually have a 3-year fund balance there. Similar with the library, I believe they had about a 1.5-year fund balance.
So interesting, because most government, at least at the federal side, if you don't spend it the year it's dedicated for, you don't get it the next year.
Right. But I can tell you there's no general fund departments that operate that way, right? They are sending that money back out into the community as fast as they get it.
All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. We were just talking, there's $165 million coming from the federal government, I guess because of the pandemic and the economic stress and strain on everybody. And I understand the mayor wants to dedicate the majority of that to flooding, drainage, and crime. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So
do you agree with what she's proposing and the quantities and how to use it?
I think overall the plan is pretty good. Most of her focus was on drainage, and that is awesome. That is what we as a council requested. And the mayor did a fantastic job of making sure that quite a bit of the allocation was for drainage. The funds that you're referring to are the American Rescue Plan dollars. And so drainage is a big piece of that. Crime is the other one. My feedback on the plan for crime is that about half of our parish is served by BRPD, and then the other half is served by the sheriff's office. Similar with the fire. So half the parish is with Baton Rouge Fire. Half the parish is served by a fire district that's in one of the unincorporated parts of the parish.
Okay.
All of the American Rescue Plan dollars for first responder types are going to either Baton Rouge Fire or BRPD.
In other words, to those institutions, first responders, within the city limits and not in the parish.
Correct. So what we've asked is and we'll debate it some more next week, what we've asked is that the mayor look at ways she can partner with the sheriff's office, ways she can partner with our fire districts to make sure that they get the ample funding that they need as well.
Am I correct in understanding that basically the funds that the city parish government collects is from sales taxes, right?
The money that we use for general fund, yes, sir. So, now we have departments that are funded through property taxes as well.
So those outside the city limits and inside the city limits are both paying taxes. I'm trying to understand why the mayor would only focus within the city limits instead of the parish.
In her defense, I do think it's a very natural inclination in that the departments that we touch are generally these departments.
All right, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. My guest, Metro Councilman Dwight Hudson. We'll be right back. I'm lawyer Locke Meredith. If you're battling an insurance company because of a wreck not your fault and they're not calling you back or being fair, whether you hire us at all, give us a call, 272-5555, or email Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates. You have nothing to lose.
Hi, I'm Sean Fagan of Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates. When insurance companies have been unfair, we've never been afraid to go to trial. Fighting hard to protect your rights, we never settle a case out of convenience. We only settle when it's right for you. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Meredith. Injuries happen when you least expect them to, making your life more complicated. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates, we know this and we strive to help each of our clients during these times. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call at 272-5555.
I'm lawyer Collins Locke Meredith. Trust is important when hiring an injury law firm. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan Associates, thousands have trusted us and gotten the results they deserved. Visit us at LockeMeredith.com. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call, 272-5555.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. I'm pleased to have on the show for the first time Dwight Hudson. He is the Metro Council person for District 9. We've been talking about flooding. Now we're going to talk about crime. So Dwight, let's talk about it. We were talking about that the mayor has, via the federal government, $165 million. She's decided to spend, I guess, the majority of that money on flooding and drainage issues and crime or police, first responders. But currently her proposal is that as it relates to the first responders, it's only going to those providers, first responders within the city limits.
Correct.
Okay. And you don't think that's an appropriate allocation of the money? Is that, I mean, I guess it's not going to your area because you're primarily outside of the city limits.
Right. And we're definitely experiencing higher crime in all different parts of the parish. We just had an extremely high profile incident happen out in District 9. So look, we need those resources everywhere. So we just want to make sure that these federal dollars are to make our entire community stronger. We want to make sure that as a city parish, we are reaching out to all of our partner agencies that provide the same services that our city entities provide to make sure that they are able to.
I'm clicking back in my head. So as I understand it, Sheriff Sid Gotro, his source of funds primarily comes from fees, but primarily it comes from sales tax.
From property tax.
Right, property tax. I'm sorry, property taxes. The institutions, the first responders within the city limits, their source of monies comes strictly from the government. I mean,
no, they get property taxes. They get property taxes as well. Yes, sir.
So there's no distinction between, because I've heard Sid tell me time after time, his only money that he gets is sales, the property sales tax, and it's just not enough when it's all said and done.
Right.
I assume the city has that same problem, but they also have access to additional funds from the mayor and I guess the Metro Council.
Right.
Does the sheriff have access to those funds?
Not traditionally. I suppose it would be possible for us to do that, but no, we don't typically do that.
The other issue, I guess, of equity, because I'm just trying to process it in my head, is, from my understanding, the vast majority of crime is occurring within probably 3 to 5 zip code areas. Primarily, the worst 3, I think, Gardere area, and what is it? The North Baton Rouge. Yeah.
North Baton Rouge, yes, sir.
So how does the crime in the outside city limits, the parish areas, compare?
There's no doubt that the bulk of the resources should go to those highest crime areas.
Okay.
But
that seems fair, but on the other hand, I don't think, outside of the city limits, getting 0 is fair either.
Correct.
So how are you going to resolve that? Do y'all?
Well, it'll come up to the Metro.
To the crime rates of each area? What?
It will come up to the Metro Council for a vote next week, and I'm hoping that the mayor will make a few changes to her proposal before then.
Seems fair.
We have a good dialogue, so I'm hopeful that she'll consider that. And
well, and you indicated too. I mean, there is crime outside of the city limits. I mean, it's really interesting to see how we don't ever seem to be able to sufficiently address this. And I've had the District Attorney Hiller Moore, Police Chief Paul. I've had, like I said, the sheriff, a lot of the law enforcement top guys, and there's never enough money, and crime is always at seemingly a historical high, and it's been this way for at least 10 years or more.
Sure.
And so I'm just wondering how else do we solve the problem of crime, because it's out of control and it affects everybody within the city limits and outside the city limits and in the state and in our nation.
Well, I think the biggest way to address crime is to address it on the front end. So that's why we look at things like our school system, at the other services that we offer as a city parish, make those exceptional. And I think the natural flow is when you improve education for students, you're going to start to see those numbers go down.
In your view, is there a genuine partnership between the city police and the sheriff's department such that they're sharing assets and resources and such, or is it just they've got their domain and that's where they hang?
There certainly is when it comes to emergency calls, when it comes to emergency dispatch, absolutely, those guys work great together. But they do have their own individual roles. They do have their own individual service
got
areas.
all kinds of hats he's got to wear.
Right.
I mean, it's not just being a protector, first responder as a sheriff's deputy.
But when they need to, yes, I do believe they work well together.
I read that you were a proponent of the misdemeanor collections. Well, I think I read 160, and I know all of those law enforcement heads that I talked to over the decade, at least the last decade, have indicated for a while they thought the parish jail should be opened, mainly as maybe a coercive point, but there were other options proposed. amnesty and some other stuff. Are you still in support of that?
I have been a big proponent of the misdemeanor jail, mostly because the data from LSU
I saw that,
suggested,
Dr. Shahade,
right, suggested that it would have an impact on daily violent crime levels.
Yeah, I think I read dropped 20% the following year after that process was initiated.
So I think with the crime that we have, we can't ignore something like that. Now I will say during the COVID type environment, I don't know that a misdemeanor jail is what we need to be doing. But certainly as we come out of the back end of this, it should be something that we pick back up and start rethinking.
Okay, let's shift gears again. So because the vast majority of your district is outside of the city limits, what is your position about St. George? I mean, that's such a bone of contention between those within the city limits and those outside the city limits, sadly. So where are you? Because you got to be in a hot seat.
Yeah. So I'm a big proponent of the city of St. George. I have been since day one, really. I supported the effort to create the Southeast School District back when it was in the legislature.
And that wasn't going to result in a new city. That was just creating an independent school district like other areas that have ultimately.
That was an effort to avoid the process of having to go through
But that didn't work.
City. It did not. So the biggest thing now, though, is that, look, the voters have spoken. They have said, we want the city of St. George. It passed. It is time for us to honor the wishes of the voters, make that happen, make the changes that we need to have happen at the city parish level to institute that. For us to be standing in the way, in the way of lawsuits, I just think is totally wrong. It's time for us to get moving and respect the will of the voters.
And so currently, it's your impression or understanding the mayor's position and the rest of the council members, because there's 12 council members, are going to do whatever they can to not allow that to take place?
No, it's important to note that the city parish is not involved in the suit against the city of St. George. It is the Larson Act is the act in the legislature that allows incorporations to happen. It provides authority for the mayor and or a member of the governing body to file suit, and they're doing that in their personal capacity, right? So the city parish.
I can't say that I knew that distinction. So technically, the only person suing is the mayor.
Is the mayor
challenging St. George?
Councilman Locke is the other party to the suit. So no city parish dollars are being used in that suit. We're not funding attorneys or anything like that. Okay. In fact, even when the issues were in the legislature this last go round, our city parish lobbyists were not involved at all because the council was sort of divided. There was several of us for it, several of us against this. So the lobbyists said, hey, we're just going to stay out.
And Councilman Lamont Cole is the first Democrat, or certainly in recent history, that is now the mayor pro tem.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Locke.
Appreciate having you on the show. This is Locke Meredith Legal Lines. Dwight Hudson, Metro Council member, District 9. Thank you for being with us.